This message is intended as a reminder that we are not licensed professionals, not psychiatrists or psychologists. If you have a serious problem, please seek professional help. The National Suicide Hotline is 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255.
There's some damsels in the DM.
Yes, queen.
Tell us what's the vibe. What's the vibe? There's some damsels in the DM. Please tell us what's the vibe. DMs, yeah we see them, yeah we read them. DMs, we don't need them, we just leave them.
Please.
Yeah.
It's going down in the DMs. Bye.
Hello, Damsels. Welcome to another episode of Damsels in the DMs.
I'm Alejandro, of course.
And I'm Ash. And today we have...
We're blessed to be joined with Jessica Jackson, the founder of Detroit's first bed and breakfast called Copperhouse Detroit. An amazing visibility activist, community architect. Jess, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good. Can you tell our listeners first what a community architect is?
Yeah, so I started my career in advocacy work, right? So I worked in education doing a lot of equity access within education, which gave me a framework and a pedagogy to work from, right? So I have a science behind what I'm doing in community. And what I've been able to cultivate in Detroit with the legal recreational marijuana market is kind of taking some of those pillars, some of those practices around equity, and applying them to community development and community organizing. So I like to say I'm a community architect because I build community around pillars, around things that matter, around substance, around ethics, around what equity should look like. And so there's a science behind it. There's some measured approach to what I'm doing.
That's awesome. How did you get started in all of this? It sounds like what you're working on is so cool. I want to visit. And I mean, I'm not much of a smoker, but we were just talking about this. I was like, I think I'm going to smoke tonight. And then we got into the conversation about you. But yeah, how did you get into all of this, into, all of your endeavors?
Yeah, so I finished. Well, my sorority sister is actually in LA, and she launched a cannabis carrying case. It's called Apothecary. It's a humidor for cannabis connoisseurs. And as she was marketing her new product, she started sharing her story around using cannabis to treat anxiety, how she used it for her mental health and therapeutic purposes in her career as a producer, and just started to normalize and destigmatize cannabis for me in a different way using different language, right? I have always been a consumer of cannabis. My friends and that's how I met some of my best friends. So I think that it started to portray to me a different side of the industry, right? And a different part of the conversation regarding marijuana. And I was in my last semester of my MBA, and one of the capstone projects was to look into different industries that were of interest to you. And one of my core values is justice. So I'm constantly thinking about ways that we should repair the harms caused by disenfranchisement, marginalization, oppression, right? As I thought about cannabis as an industry that actually has opportunity to do that, both from the criminal justice perspective, right? We can right some wrongs with expungement, but also from just racial equity and ensuring that Black and brown folks who have been disproportionately criminalized for this plant has more access to the industry. And so I got started by doing some advocacy. That's what I was good at. I started going to conferences. I went to spaces that were centering women within the industry. I started to get on social media, which is what I met a business partner. We now do social media management for cannabis brands. And then I always wanted to hold space, right? Like I think that even as I think about my own identity development, space and community have been so key to who I am. And there isn't really safe space right now for cannabis consumers, as we don't have a fully developed market, right? So we can go to bars and have a drink. We can go to restaurants and have a drink. We can convene around alcohol very easily, but there's not really that same environment yet for cannabis. And so my wife and I just opened our home, and we started inviting tourists through Airbnb. They have an overnight stay where if they're engaging in the recreational market, they have a safe space where they can rest. And two, we, as a queer identified couple, wanted to make sure that the spaces that you are staying in feel welcoming to who you are in your whole self. And we knew from our own engagement in Europe, like how, like, we stayed in a hostel and it was intimidating to like just be affectionate together, right?
Yeah.
And so we wanted to be sure that there's a space in Detroit that if a queer couple was traveling, they were cannabis consumers, they would have a space where they could be themselves. And then we also host like content production, social media, that you said you like the aesthetic set.
That's where it's from. I love that.
Yeah. And so that's kind of how we got started. I've just been learning as much as possible about the industry and what it has to offer, and have been doing both the organizing side of things, the holding space, advocacy for expungement, and working with National Expungement Week, and just trying to get a very holistic perspective of the industry. And now I'm pursuing licensure. So we'll see. That's the next venture.
That's really cool. It seems like you have a full plate of really cool adventures coming up. So Copperhouse Detroit. Is it like so you're saying it's an Airbnb experience? Is it on Airbnb experiences, or is it its own thing?
Yeah, I am listed on bed and breakfast only right now.
Okay.
We wanted to exclusively prioritize platforms that center on the cannabis industry and the cannabis community. We were hosted on Airbnb. We took our listing down, but yeah, it's something very similar. You can actually go to copperhousedet.com and just book straight from our website. But yeah, we are so cool. An overnight stay. You can also book an experience. We have caterers that when you purchase your cannabis from a licensed dispensary, we can infuse oil and have a personal chef prepare a meal for you.
What?
We have partners with vendors where we do like massage. So we have a massage therapist that uses like CBD massage oil. We have done sound bath healing. We've done parties, like whatever we can create in the space. We've done a wedding. We've had an elevated elopement.
Oh my God.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
What I love about what you're sharing though is like, it really celebrates the community. Like, yes, you are creating this space for, individual and even like partner opportunities to kind of relax and escape, but you're also bringing in community members to share what they're excited to celebrate with the community with. Is this like self-perpetuating cycle of goodness? Can you share with us, since you did mention your wife, Cara, can you share with us and our listeners how you two met and how that your relationship started and flourished?
Yeah. It's interesting because I think the community is a core pillar, right? Like, I met Cara in my first job outside of college. I was a college advisor, so helping students get to and through college. But it was a small kind of, it wasn't a large city, and I am from Detroit, and I am used to like city environments. And it was quite rural, like rural Michigan. So when we think of the queer community in that space, it was very small and hard to locate, right? And so one of the way that I met her was online. And the fun, I don't know if anybody, this might be a little bit aging myself, but Downlink, it was like a gay MySpace. And we met on Downlink, and she sent me a message. She sent me a message because I had at the time red hair, like fire engine red hair. And I'm tall, I'm like 6 foot tall. And so I was pretty easy to identify in a small town, right? Like I was also masculine presenting. So I was like a butch lesbian that was pretty big with red hair, right? Like people, like I was easy to spot in a crowd in this small town. And so she messaged me, was like, I've been seeing you around. She's at the gym. She saw me like leaving work. And we started talking and I never met up with her. And then she finally was like, I would like to get dinner or hang out as friends. And so then we finally met up. And honestly, we've been glued at the hip ever since. It was like we had that first date. And I tell people this, I really didn't like her personality that much.
Oh,
really attractive to me. I like really thought she was pretty. She was mean. She's like kind of like, okay, I'm a Cancer. So I am a Cancer through and through, soft. Cara is a Capricorn. Capricorn through and through. Capricorns are earth signs and very traditional. I'm a Cancer, it's a water sign, and we go with the flow, right? Like and so
I've dated a Cancer, and I wouldn't say that about Cancer.
We do. I mean, unless you hit us the wrong way and then we go into our shell. But she is very, so she just lectured me the whole time. And it went like that for a few dates. And then we had some like things that we just were glued at the hip ever since. So we went on that first date and then we hung out every day after that. And then we kept dating. And then by January, so we started dating in November. And by January, she agreed to like move across the country with me to go because I had gotten into Teach for America. So and we've been together for a decade.
Wow.
And we've grown together, right? Like she's gone to school, I've gone to school. I feel like we've grown up together.
That's so amazing. Can you tell us your engagement story?
Yeah. So we have a double engagement. I proposed to her in Europe, in Paris. I had all of our friends. Yeah, it was, I wanted a story. I am I like grand gestures. But I had all of my friends. I think you're in the book, Alejandro.
Yes.
You made a page, I think,
Yes, I did.
All my friends made. So I started the book with like my adventure before her. And so like that was like my friends and family kind of spoke to who I was. And then I did like her adventure before me, and I had her friends and family kind of make pages for her, and then it was like our adventure together, and it was like an adventure book from Up. And so as she's like going through this, and I got her tickets to Moulin Rouge. And so as we're like going over to this area, she's kind of going through the book. And the last page, and I was like, so I have a question to ask you, and all our friends agree. And then there's like all these, cause we're in Europe and our friends can't really be there. And they have like all these thumbs up picture. And then the last, page is like, will you marry me? And we were outside of Moulin Rouge by the time she got to that page, but it was, that's how we got engaged, the first proposal. And then the second proposal, because she got a ring, but I didn't let her sleep until I got my ring. She did kind of like the 12 days. So we started dating in November, and like the first time I told her that I loved her was around Christmas. And so it was a Christmas themed engagement, and we had like the 12 days of love sort of thing. And she had all of my friends and family kind of read me poems that she had clipped. And then outside of the place where I had first told her that I loved her, she proposed to me. And so it was like a really nice, and it was
romantic. That's so cute.
Yeah, it was definitely, I get to live in a fairy tale because I found my partner, and I found my partner pretty early.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, I think that like this kind of relates to finding my own identity, right? Like, I I met Cara before I really knew who I was or even embraced who I was. And so like I think that when you're in partnership with people, you have to like really be open and willing to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I've been blessed with having a stable, consistent lover who like accepts me wherever I am in my journey. And so I would say that as I think about my own journey of like becoming who I am, accepting who I am in my body, accepting who I am in my identity, it goes back to that community, right? Like, and yes, Cara is my life partner, and I'm really blessed to have that with her. But I also have so many people that have poured into me and nurtured me and like affirmed me. And like, so when I think about being my own person of who I am, a lot of it has to do with the people who were when I was laying on the couch, depressed and not wanting to like continue my life at moments, right? Like that's a very real lived experience for me. Getting me off the couch, even if it was just to go for a walk, or even if it was just to go. One of my friends, we were trying to steal trees. Like she was like, I need your help getting this tree out of the ground. And so like I was like, I was about to have to call a hotline today, and you got me out of the house to help you with this thing. And so when I think about my journey, and I still think I'm on a journey, right? Like we're all
Mm-hmm.
Right.
journey. It really is about access to, support from, and membership within community for me. Um, and I think that that's how I want to do everything. I want to center my businesses on community. I want to center the work that I do on community. And I really want to amplify communities that are often underserved and undervalued. And so that's kind of like my partnership and my journey.
That's
That's
awesome.
beautiful.
Can you tell us more about because you did mention body positivity. Can you, so we know you're a huge activist for the LGBTQ plus community and for body positivity. Could you talk a little bit more about that and how you kind of paved your way to get to where you are right now, being an activist for those communities?
Yeah. I think honestly it boils down to not seeing myself in anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like I I can, okay, I'm in cannabis. I don't, first of all, I don't see Black people. Where are you? Where are you as leaders, right? Like in this industry. And then like, oh, and when we do have, there's like no women, right? Like where are the women, and where are the queer women, and where are the fat queer women? So it's like constantly like, where do I see myself reflected in the spaces that I occupy? And when I don't see that, that means that there are other people who are like me, who might be more melanated than me, who might have different experiences that don't get to see themselves reflected, and yet we're trying to sell stuff to them. And so I think that that's why I say I'm a visibility activist, right? It's about recognizing the value that folks who don't fit a certain aesthetic have to all of this, both from a healing space, right? Like it's about recognizing the value that I have within myself, but also from just like a brand development space, right? Like that is an audience, that is someone who will engage with your brand, and they have value to you, and you should demonstrate that to them. So a lot of my work has been centered on getting access and seeing myself reflected in systems, right? And at tables, in marketing. And so I started with a photo shoot. It was really just about convening fat or plus size or curvy women who consumed cannabis. We all got together. We wore some lingerie. It was the first time I had worn lingerie publicly. I had not shown that much of my body ever in public space. And we hung out all day. It was like a brunch experience. We got our makeup done. It was just, we smoked and it was different types of consumption methods, but like in yourself, and you were kind of nude. Like I literally was almost nude. And so you had to just be comfortable in yourself, like you had to just be like, and it made me, and there was one moment that was like really amazing. I was like hating on myself, right? Because we all do that. And I was like, I hate this part of my body, whatever. What do you think? I was talking to someone that was there with me, and she was like, yeah, I don't have that same problem, but I really hate this part of my body. And then it just was like, oh, we all have different bodies, and we're all just like working in our own heads and up against society to accept that. And so like, for me, it's just about how can we help folks get along faster? Because, okay, now I get it. I accept that I'm fat. I accept that my body looks differently. I need other people to like accept that as well. And so like, it's about that message as well. Like, how do we now start to dismantle some stuff and get people to recognize those things? And it's the same with, I think that in the LGBT community, we're a little farther along in advocacy and acceptance. I think that our trans siblings have need a lot of support and love, especially in the Midwest.
Absolutely.
And absolutely. I think that I know that I moved to the East Coast for marriage equality, right? Like Cara and I had to move out of the Midwest in order to get legally married. And so it's not that far, like that, this moment of safety that I feel right now in my sexual orientation is not it's not lost on me that it wasn't so long ago that like I couldn't exist legally in this state. And so, and the voters in this state determined that. And so like that really, when I think about what my city needs, I think about just being a courageous model for what living in yourself can be for other folks, because it's hard. It's hard to accept yourself, embrace yourself, and just be when society is kind of telling you that you're not right or you're broken.
And sometimes it doesn't even have to go so far as society. It could be as close as family and perhaps even friends at a certain point, in a certain person's life. So I agree with you. It definitely has a lot to do with like the self. It has to start within and really just allowing that to like radiate and spread. But I'm curious though, like as tragedies continue to unleash disproportionate pain and suffering, how have you and Cara helped each other and your community, stay motivated to keep moving forward?
Yeah. And I think that we have learned how to survive some of the most, like, we shouldn't have to.
Right.
Like, the realities that we survive and thrive in are realities that are unjust, and just we shouldn't have to witness the level and intensity of Black pain and suffering that we do, right? We shouldn't have to endure backstepping policy that like is gonna shift and change people's lives. Like, we shouldn't have, like, there's just a lot of things that's not right. And I think the first way that we hold space for each other is owning the fact that this sucks. Like, this sucks. It sucks, and it can feel heavy, right? And there are some days that I'm not able to be productive just because I'm focused on, like a trial, that's going to demonstrate, like there's going to be. And so I think that holding space for community should being responsive to whatever they need in that moment, even if that is not a pretty optimistic thing, right? Even if it means that we're just going to cry together. So we and this, has been years in the making, but like, we would hold moon ceremonies for releasing bonfires, community convenings. The pandemic got in the way of some of those things, but we moved some of the spaces virtually. We have We have started like really focusing on what we can create safely for people, whether that be content production, where we do smaller scale content development. We've done organizing for like policy that's equitable, right? We've done different events that benefit philanthropies like National Expungement Week that serve communities that have been unjustly harmed. And we really center on healing and space and boundaries, and really normalize what care can look like, whether that means like, hey, I'm going to have a sleepover with my friend who has been in a depressive episode for months, because they need to hold space. They need to be around people, and they need to know that they're cared for, even though they are in a moment where their brain is telling them to isolate. I'm going to make sure that I'm supporting like local businesses to ensure that they can stay open, right? I'm going to make sure that I'm educating I developed an entire curriculum on cultivating racial equity in the workplace, and have started developing a DEIB strategy framework for the business and what that looks like.
And for the listeners who might not be familiar with that acronym, break that down.
Yeah. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So diversity work really is around rehumanizing, right? It's about making sure that we can hold folks that come from marginalized identities in their humanity and hold space for that. And so equity is about dismantling like systemic harms, right? Like there have been barriers upon barriers for groups to access. So like, how can we advance? We have to remove the barriers and advance equity in that way. But belonging is about like membership and feeling a part of, and ensuring the environment values you, and that your voice is heard, and that you feel safe, psychologically safe, physically safe. And so I like to tie all those. I think we have an idea, but belonging's about how can we be at doing this together. And so really, I think that for folks who hold marginalized identities, now is the time to be practicing and cultivating a level of care. And really, if it's not your expertise to be doing work in advancing justice, I feel like it's not our job to do that right now, because this sucks.
Right.
And the folks that want to advance justice have to figure out who to partner with, how to organize, and how to do the work. But I would say for marginalized folks, we got to take care of ourselves however we need it. For me, that means overproductive. But some people,
mental health is so important, especially right now with these. I mean, it's been important for a long time, because with marginalized communities, like it sucks. It really does suck. And that is the one thing that we have more control over, that we should be taking care of. But I do want to take it back to your upbringing, and just, like who you are as a person. And if you feel comfortable, your story of your coming out and just becoming this badass person that you are today.
I appreciate that affirmation. I think about this all the time, because I hold a lot of privilege, right? Like I hold a lot of privilege identities. Even as I think about, so I think about who I am as a culmination of a lot of different experiences, right? Because in one aspect of my life, I grew up with a parent who was able to provide a certain livelihood for me that got me to a certain place, right? And I think that there were some benefits from my upbringing in that way. And then I went on to go to like one of the top universities in the country, and like got a certain level of education, is able to speak a certain way that gets people to hear me. I present as light-skinned. And so I know that I have navigated life with a lot of access. And I own that, and I recognize that, that but also I've navigated life with difficulty and humility, right? In addition to being, having like light skin access, I navigated in a fat body, a fat, large female body, right? And what that meant for me in proximity to safety. Although and so I don't say this in like, there's a hierarchy of oppression here, but I think that I've had to learn to navigate my life humbly, because of some of my positionality, some of my intersections, right? Like the first time I dated a woman, or the first time I kissed a girl, I was 12. And so I knew in that moment when I was 12 years old that I was not like everybody else. And so, yes, I was experimenting very sexually with my friend at 12 years old. And I like that, like the being gay thing is like, I was ready to take the leap at 12. So like, I guess that I was ready. But I also held it and did not come out of the closet until I was 23. So like, yeah, like even like, right. Like I was out on campus because, like you could be out on campus and not out at home, but like I didn't come out until I was 23, and I cut off all my hair. The year I came out, he cut off all my hair. And like, I was like, this is who I am. Like, and so that was like, 11 years to embrace who I was. And so I think that so when I think about what makes me the courageous person I am today, it's about being nurtured in an environment that gave me access to positive development, whether it be I never had to struggle. I met that last lower level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like I was able to have shelter, food, like those things. And because I had some of that, the difficulties I've been able to navigate and kind of stay positive within it, even when it's been hard. So yeah, I the first time I interacted with a girl I was 12, and then I came out when I was 23. I also grew up in a very religious household. And so my grandmother, I did not come out to until I was damn near married to Kara. So I even though I was fully out everywhere, I didn't come out into my grandma until like I was like, Grandma, I'm engaged to a woman. I'm going to be getting married. I'm going to send you this. I'd like you to send me a gift. Like that was like essentially what I said to her.
Very matter of fact. Like there's no opinions needed in this situation.
I was like, you might not support this, but I'm about to start a life and I need your support as my grandma who's always done this for me. Like that. Yeah. And she's come a longer way. She still calls Kara my roommate.
Man.
Yeah, my friend. It's all about like finding the balance of like, where can I positively try this out so that I can accept it and embrace it in myself, right? Like, so with Curvy Cannabis, I tried out lingerie in a group setting. I like got comfortable with myself. In college when I was ready to come out, right? Because I didn't come out till I was 23, so that was after I graduated. I had a huge community of queer folks. Like I was in the gay scene. And so like being in gay space gave me confidence to be fully who I am. And still, I think it's about like having those affirmative spaces to try it out, make sure that you feel comfortable and that there's someone there to affirm you and let you know that you're on the right track.
Yeah, that's very important.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Oh my God. It's like you're creating a movement, honestly.
Yeah.
Like the training, like your involvement in education and even with Loud Social marketing, it's like you really are creating a shift in like the consciousness that should have already been in place. But here we are. And you're taking these amazing steps to make sure that, you know, there is representation for everyone, that no one feels like invisible because they can't see themselves in their surroundings.
That is the coolest thing ever.
And I totally hear you as far as when you told your grandma, like, okay, it is what it is. Because I don't think I ever like officially had like a conversation with my grandma, like, hey, this is me. Like, and I was never really in a relationship before I moved out here to California. So like, I never had the opportunity to like bring anyone home. But for my dad's 60th birthday party, my boyfriend came with me. We went, and like, I mean, there were certain relatives where I was just like, I remember how certain conversations happened years and years ago. So I don't know how this is going to go, but this is where I connected with you when you were saying like, you know, I'm not asking for anything. I'm sharing with you, like, this is my life. This is who I am having in my life. Like, would you like to be a part of this or not? It was a really cool and beautiful moment because like, I guess another thing that I noticed in that experience was like I didn't really have to worry about all that I was concerned about. But yeah, it's amazing to see that growth and to know that we can be a part of the change. We can start that change with the people that we hold closest to our hearts. Well, I think it's time for us to get to the letter. So I'm going to go ahead and read that, and we want to take it apart and get your perspective on what sort of advice you can give this listener. So, dear Damsels, I am a POC listener, and I'm really excited to see your new hosts, as I think it'll add a great perspective to the podcast. I'm writing to you as I have been in a relationship with a white man, and it was going great up until the recent racial turmoil happening in our country. I just don't feel like he understands my perspective as a Black woman and the gravity of how the world's events affect me. I'm worried I can no longer be with him because there will always be a part of my identity that feels left out of our relationship. Is this relationship salvageable, or do I have to be with someone who's more understanding of my perspective? Love always. Whitewashing my rainbow mind. All right. What sort of feedback do you have?
I really appreciate this letter. So I am a biracial woman of color. So I have a white mom and a Black father, or I had a Black father before he passed. So I think this, and I have experienced the same distance in my connection with my white family right now, because there is something that they don't have to see that is so pervasive in my life, in the life of my community. And it is hurtful and feels re-traumatizing for it to feel denied, and not a part of their experience and accountability, right? So I can empathize deeply with what it feels like to love someone who is either dismissive, oblivious, or flat out in denial of your reality as a person of color. And that is really devastating and heartbreaking. My hope and aspiration is because I love, like, I'm talking my mother, right? Like, I love my mother. And I would never want to, I am estranged from her right now. We are not speaking, but I am slowly making moves to heal and restore that relationship. So I am hopeful that we can have cross-racial relationships as we learn. Because the problem is not with the ignorance, right? We are socialized in an environment that allows us to be ignorant. Like, he hasn't had to learn about this. He hasn't had to grapple with racial justice issues because he is blinded by his privilege. What is the issue is if you don't take the steps to learn, to listen and empathize and understand. And then the one of the frameworks that I'm now reading about that is from a community organizer in Detroit, and it's around recentering humanity. So it's a co-liberator model instead of being like, I need an ally in this, right? That kind of removes the severity of this issue from their humanity, right?
Yeah.
And so this model calls for an understanding of how our humanities are tied up. And when you're a co-liberator, you recognize that our liberation is connected, and that the only way that I can fully be in my humanity is to recognize and make sure that you can be in yours. And so I would start with finding a framework that you both buy into, learning together. If this is someone you're in relationship with that you love, that you want to continue being in relationship with, I would say that it is worth the investment to go through that education together so that you have a framework, a vernacular. You can talk about it together. And then if the person is resistant to learning with you, then you know that they're not worth your investment or time, because they're not willing to honor your humanity and how your humanity is tied up in them. So I would say, I would hope that the relationship is salvageable and that this partner would be willing to educate and learn with you. I would hope that you would be wanting to offer that time, because people of color don't have to. Like, we don't have to educate white people.
No.
But when you're in a relationship and you love them, maybe you make a little sacrifice. But you don't have to. And that's where you have to, like for me and my mama, I'm gonna make a little sacrifice, right? Like, that's my mom. But if this person isn't there, then maybe it's not salvageable.
Yeah. And I think this conversation is one of the most important conversations that interracial couples should have in the beginning of their dating career or dating life, because I know that I have been in really, just relationships with white men, and it's like my whole skin color and culture and my background is just overlooked, like I don't know. It's just, there's a lot more there. And the way that they treat white women and like white women's experiences are way different to women of color. And like what we go through, the stuff that like day to day, like the things that they say can be very damaging to the relationship, where they won't be saying that to like a white woman because they haven't had those experiences to feel the same way. So yeah, I think it's a very important conversation that if you are white people, if you are going to get into a relationship with a person of color, be educated, like do that and educate, like, educate yourself, like for the person that you love, for the person that you want to be with, and obviously for the whole country and like other people of color, but especially for the person that you're going to be in a relationship with.
And I think to add to that, it's really important to be open to listening.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to educating yourself, you really have to come from a place of understanding and openness to really comprehend the other person's experience. And the only way to do that is by listening.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like to say that creatives, or like I do design work, because we get so much feedback on our creative process, right? Like we're constantly getting reviews. We're set for justice work.
Yeah.
We're comfortable with being criticized. We're comfortable with, because we know that it will lead to a much better end product.
Absolutely.
We just have to be creative. We have to embrace that creative mindset and be, because even though I have all these intersectional experiences that put me on a marginalized spectrum, right? I'm still not a dark-skinned Black woman. I don't navigate that experience. I might get it wrong sometimes when talking about that. And so I try not to, or I'm still cis, right? And so like I'm cisgender, meaning I live in my gender assigned to me at birth, right? So I have privilege around my gender identity. So when it comes to trans issues, I would never intentionally cause harm, but I'm gonna mess up in areas that change. Identity politics change consistently. And so when I do, I have to be ready to receive the feedback And I have to be ready to listen to the feedback. And I have to be ready to do my own education in order to restore the harm that I caused and not do it again. And if we can just embrace that mindset and like know that like I'm going to mess up, not because I'm a bigot and I'm just going to be an asshole, or I'm going to be, but like because I am learning new experiences in this world and want to create space for them. And really that's the mindset. Like, be ready for feedback, be ready to mess up, and be ready for feedback.
Absolutely.
Be open to it, learn from it, be open to it, and just grow.
Can you share with us, from Copperhouse to Loud Social, tell us how we can find you, book a spot at Copperhouse on Button. Go ahead. Tell us.
Give yourself out.
Yeah. You can find me at I Am Just Human. So I Am Just Human on Instagram. You can find Copperhouse at Copperhouse DET. So Copperhouse Detroit. I also have marketing at loud.social. And then if you want to check out our space and book with us, if you're ever in town, we are a lived in bed and breakfast. So we're here to help and support, but it is copperhousedet.com, the same there. So let's connect. And
amazing. If I'm ever in Detroit, I will be there. I want to have this experience. And especially because it's not only just smoking, there's other experiences related to bud, like that you're providing.
You can even plan a photo shoot.
Yeah.
Hello.
With all the plants.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. And it was really great just getting to know you and getting to know your story.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I miss you.
I miss you too. I love you so much. And thank you so much for being on and celebrating and just being you. Thank you.
Love y'all.
Love you.
Bye. All right, guys. Well, this has been another episode of Damsels in the DMs.
Until next time.
It's going down in the DMs.
DMs, we don't need them. We just leave them.
Please.
Yeah.
It's going down in the DMs. Bye.